Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a massive strategic challenge facing what is arguably Africa's most ambitious industrial project ever. We're talking about the Dangote Refinery. It's an absolute titan of industry. But, despite its sheer scale and literally game-changing potential for the continent, it's currently navigating a deeply complex maze just to secure the basic ingredients it needs to operate. So, by diving into the strategy behind vertical integration, we're going to understand exactly how this industrial giant is attempting to secure its own future.
Now you might be wondering, how does a $20 billion mega refinery, sitting right in the heart of one of the most oil-rich nations on the planet, end up starving for crude? I mean, it almost sounds like a riddle, right? You'd think the oil would just flow straight from the ground into the pipes. But as you'll see, the reality of the global energy market and the local landscape is a whole lot more complicated.
Part 1. The crude supply headache. 650,000. That's the exact number of barrels per day required to feed this beast. Just let that sheer volume sink in for a second. To put that into perspective, that's enough to fill a massive fleet of tanker trucks every single day. And that incredible scale is exactly why the supply issue has been their absolute biggest headache since 2023. When you need 650,000 barrels every day, you literally cannot afford a single hiccup in your supply chain. But, well, hiccups are exactly what they've been dealing with. The realities of the Nigerian oil landscape continuously threaten their day-to-day operations. First, you've got endemic theft and vandalism impacting production lines. Then there are constricting OPEC quotas that limit how much oil can legally enter the market. Add to that instances where the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, the NNPC, has actually defaulted on deliveries. And crucially, the specific grades of crude the refinery actually wants are often diverted to DSTP swap deals. Essentially, that crude is traded away for refined products before Dangote can even get their hands on it.
Part 2. Following the money.
$20 billion. That is the staggering annual foreign exchange exposure Dangote faces by having to buy crude in US dollars, even when they're buying locally. But think about it, if they produce their own oil, they can shift those costs to the local currency, the naira. By producing their own feedstock, they completely bypass the need to source roughly $20 billion a year just to buy crude. That massively, and I mean massively, shields their refining margins from currency devaluation.
Let's break down the profit models here, because this is super important. A standalone refiner relies solely on the crack spread, which is just the difference between the cost of crude and the price of the refined products. But an integrated major, they capture upstream profit per barrel plus the refining margin. So, for example, if crude is $70 a barrel and lifting it out of the ground only costs $30, an integrated company captures that $40 difference themselves. Instead of paying it to a third party, that completely transforms the math.
And those financial advantages cascade through the whole business. It lowers working capital by replacing 30 to 90-day letter of credit cycles with simple internal transfers. It also acts as a hedge against government export restrictions during FX crises. And if they ever want to go for an IPO or raise debt, mimicking the reserves plus refining model of giants like Aramco and Exxon boosts their valuation. It creates a much stronger equity story for banks, significantly lowering their overall cost of capital.
Part 3. Taking back control. You see, not all oil is created equal. Owning the production means you get to choose the exact crude slate. The Dangote Refinery is specifically designed for Nigerian light sweet crude like Bonny Light or Escover Rose. So instead of dealing with frustrating crude quality mismatches, controlling the source means you send the perfect mix straight to your refinery, and that translates directly to higher yields of highly profitable petrol and diesel. This ownership creates incredible operational leverage across the board. First off, it secures feedstock supply to avoid those devastating shutdowns. It unlocks bank financing for their massive Phase 2 expansion, which aims for a staggering 1 million barrels per day. It also provides 150 megawatts of associated gas for power generation and supplies cheap gas feedstock for their fertilizer plant. Oh, and it maximizes their bargaining leverage with the NNPC and international oil companies. It's a real game changer.
So, with all these incredible benefits, we have to ask, is buying oil blocks a guaranteed fix? I mean, it sounds perfect on paper, right? But we really need to pull back to reality for a second here.
Part 4. The risks of ownership.
Because the upstream market presents some massive hurdles. We're talking highly expensive acquisition costs right out of the gate. Operating onshore means dealing with endemic theft issues, navigating incredibly complex community relations, and facing significant ongoing funding challenges just to keep the pumps running. These are just the objective market realities of operating in this space.
Because of those risks, the path to profit is actually super specific. Success basically requires acquiring stakes in deep water fields, which are largely insulated from many of those onshore risks, or targeting marginal fields with extremely low break-evens. It requires absolute precision in exactly which assets they decide to buy.
Part 5. A historic breakthrough.
And actually, there's been a massive development on this front. Dangote has already begun preliminary production from Niger Delta assets in the Kalikule field under Oil Mining Lease 72. In terms of ownership, Dangote holds a dominant 85% stake in the upstream business here, with the NNPC holding the remaining 15%. Interestingly, these fields actually peaked back in the 1990s, but Dangote acquired them in 2015 and has now successfully revived them. Pretty wild, right?
Let's put this progress into perspective. Right now, the Kalikule output is at 4,500 barrels per day, with an expected short-term ramp-up to 15,000. But compare that historic milestone to their ultimate refinery need of 650,000 barrels per day, and you can see just how far they still have to go. They've started the engine, for sure, but there's a long, long road ahead.
As the source material perfectly sums up, this move brings Africa's biggest industrialist one step closer to full energy independence, producing crude to power his 650,000 barrels per day refinery. It's a monumental start. It proves the vertical integration strategy is actually in motion. But to achieve total independence, a whole lot more is going to be needed.
Which leaves us with this final burning question. Dangote has absolutely taken a historic step, but will this bold integration strategy, buying up deep water and marginal fields, ultimately be enough to fully feed that 650,000 barrel beast day in and day out? It's a high-stakes gamble that could literally reshape global energy markets, and it's a story we should all be watching closely. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.